Let us offer our consecration to the Lord. Lord, we offer up to you this day as we continue our reading of the book of Exodus. Let us be open to where you're leading us, and let us be open to your will in our lives. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. So we are now in our third day of looking at the book of Exodus, and we're in chapter 3. And this is this key chapter where we see this encounter between Moses and God. So we talked about how Moses comes from the Levites. And of course, the Levites are the priesthood of the Jews, of the Hebrews. And so that is the priestly class. So just happened that Moses is part of the priestly class. He's hasn't had any connection to this, and we don't know what he knows about God in the first place. We know he was brought up as an Egyptian. You can rest assured that he worshipped Egyptian gods as part of his family way, his life. As he got older, prior to him being exiled, he might have said, gee, I don't know if these Egyptian gods are who they say they are, whatever the case may be. Keep another thing in mind is there was a pharaoh by the name of Akhenaten. The Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston has this extensive information on Akhenaten, and he was a pharaoh who decided that there was only one God, and that was the God of the sun. So that's Akhenaten. And there is rumor, but it's not really accepted as rumor, as truth, just a rumor. It's like one of those things that, maybe so-and-so was really so-and-so, that Akhenaten was Moses, but no one can really make that connection. It's like, maybe Akhenaten was Moses, but you go, well, how do we draw the line between what we know about Moses and what we know about Akhenaten and make those dots connect? And I don't think anyone has really done that well. Not that I've done extensive studying on it, I haven't, but I've definitely looked into Akhenaten. A fascinating story. And again, it was Akhenaten who said there was only one God. Now, he worshipped the God of the sun, but that means it's fascinating because you realize that when you do that, you can see this in Paul too, when you turn around and change the God you're going to worship in a polytheistic society, you change the economy immediately. And this presents a problem for people who rely on the economy the way it was. Because what happens is you have these whole economic systems built around every single god. And if you say, well, those gods don't exist, or you can't worship those gods anymore, which happened in the time of Akhenaten, it also happened in the time of Constantine. When you do that, then what happens is that all the people who were connected, who made a living in relation to those gods, they lose their living and they become quite angry. And that's what we saw with Alexander the coppersmith. It's believed that Alexander the coppersmith made little figures of the gods that the Romans worshipped. And then, of course, Paul comes in and says there are no such gods. There's only one God, the unknown God that the Greeks knew him by. There's only this one God, and we're going to tell you about the son of that one God, who is named Jesus, who was also God. And this throws the economy off completely, and Alexander the coppersmith is not happy. And he wants to get rid of Paul, and he makes life miserable for Paul. Well, you can see the motive that happens. So there's some fascinating stories around Akhenaten, who was the pharaoh who believed in only one God. And as soon as he died, by the way, Egypt returned back to their previous worship system and economy and everything else. So it's a fascinating story, and you can go to the Museum of Fine Arts here in Boston and look up more information on Akhenaten. And strangely enough, I was surprised to learn that his son was King Tut. Now, of course, obviously, they didn't call his son King Tut. It was Tutankhamun. And that was his son. He had obviously many children, but his son. And I was looking up information on Akhenaten and realized that he is labeled by some groups as the most hated of pharaohs. And that would make sense because, again, he was the one who changed everything to worship the one God, which is going to tip the whole system upside down. And again, as soon as he died, I guess it would have been King Tutankhamun, the pharaoh, who would have just undone everything. Now, Tutankhamun was very young when he took over. And therefore, he was probably had some people convincing him to reverse everything. And so he did. And so you have this fascinating story, but this fascinating reality that really shows this deeper truth that happens, that religion actually can have these intensely deep roots in a society, in every aspect of a society. So it's important to know that. We're going to talk more on the other side of the break. You're listening to St. Anthony Overnight from St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. We'll be right back. You can now leave a message for us, which we can air and discuss on this program. Just call 617-297-7452. That's 617-297-7452. 617-297-7452. Feel free to call, leave a comment, a question, or even feedback, and we may play it on the air. I can discuss your comment or question as well, so give that a try. 617-297-7452, 617-297-7452. So anyway, we're back, and we're talking about this reality of this passage from Moses. Or about Moses. So he is now in exile. He goes up into this whole new area where he ends up on the mount. And he's already, he's already met his essential family because he is working for his father-in-law, who is Jethro, and his father-in-law is a priest of Midian. So what does that mean? I believe that would mean his father-in-law also was from the tribe of Levi. I'm not sure. But we understand, he was a priest of Midian, and that was the priestly class. And so what we're looking at is now Moses is going and he's leading the flock and, the sheep and everything. And he comes to this bush that appears to be on fire, but is not being consumed. And this is when he starts to see something's up. And we know we have that encounter with the Lord, that he encounters the Lord, and the Lord is now going to put into place this whole new mission. Now, what's interesting is Moses thinks he's going to free the Hebrews. Okay, but we understand that this is the beginning of a whole new reality that affects us even to this day. Moses has no understanding. No one has any understanding of what the Lord is doing. He's just taking everything one day at a time. The Lord is showing everything one day at a time. But what is he's doing? He's beginning a whole new reality that begins with Moses being sent out to free the Hebrews. And if you know this whole history of the Hebrews, the great celebration they have at Passover, which we'll talk about later in our exploration of Exodus as the first reading, we see this whole reality of Passover, but that's still celebrated today. Is Moses aware of this is what he's beginning? No, of course not. All he knows is that the Lord is responding through Moses, that he has heard the cry of the oppressed people, his people in Egypt, and he's going to free them. And that's what we know. But notice something else. He refers to himself as the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And interesting enough, he doesn't call him Israel, he calls him Jacob. So he is the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jesus later refers to this as saying that God is the God of the living. So it's not the deceased, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but the still living in God, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So this is important. And so Moses, again, absolutely unaware of what he's getting himself into, is now encountering the Lord, and the Lord teaches him from day one a whole new way of understanding. Because what does he do? He says, remove your shoes because you are on holy ground. It's one of my favorite lines in the Bible. He's now beginning to teach Moses this new experience with this God that he probably did not know or did not know well, because he was brought up in an Egyptian family. He would have been taught to follow the gods of the Egyptians. And so here we have this reality. So here he comes, and he is encountering the Lord, and he's going to learn something all new. We see a parallel reality with St. Paul. St. Paul, of course, knew the Jewish faith, and Jesus now teaches him the next step, which is this whole reality of Christianity. And Paul learns this from day one. And so we see these parallel figures. In Moses begins the salvation history that continues through the Jews, and then in Jesus it continues through us. But it all begins with this particular moment we're looking at in today's reading. We'll talk more tomorrow. Have yourself a blessed day. I want to call your attention to Catholic TV, which offers great faith-filled, family-friendly programming 24 hours a day. You can find your cable channel at www.getcatholictv.com, and you can watch online on the free apps or check out the YouTube channel. Daily Mass, Rosaries, the Divine Mercy Chaplet, and the Our Lady of Perpetual Help Novena are all available online and on demand. Check out CatholicTV.com. If you would like to support our program, please consider a donation to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts. There are several ways to consider this. One is to purchase any of our merchandise, which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. That's CatholicAudiomedia.com. There are coffee mugs there. There's also my latest book, Encounter Christ in Your Humanity, all of which you can find at the shopping tab at CatholicAudiomedia.com. You can also donate to the show directly through either the Donate tab, also at CatholicAudiomedia.com, or by sending a donation through the U.S. Postal Service with your questions and comments at 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. That's St. Anthony Parish, 43 Holton Street, Allston, Massachusetts, 02134. Finally, the best way you can support our parish is to attend Mass on Sundays at 10 o'clock and be a part of our parish. We thank you for any support you would like to give to St. Anthony Parish in Allston, Massachusetts, the sponsoring parish for this media outreach to Catholics and other Christians in the WROL, WEZE, and podcast listening audience. In Cristo vivimos.